Superman Man of Tomorrow issue 2 heads to Shot Toys in Metropolis, where the staff talk about how more and more people are returning their toys. One of the staff members say it's thanks to Lexcorp buying out the company, meaning there was a cut in quality thanks to cost saving. But the other man says that Winslow Slot being an insane villain probably didn't help much either. After they lock up for the night, some of the dinosaur toys activate, roaring to life as the building explodes thanks to one of Toyman's traps. Toyman walks away from the rubble, saying that Lex Luthor will regret what he did to his toys. 2 weeks later at Lexcorp HQ, Lex is handed a note from Toyman, warning him to stop ruining his businesses as Mercy arrives, telling him that Clark Kent has arrived, happy to wait until Luthor's schedule is freed up for a comment. Lex decides to let Clark in, telling the reporter that he's persistent as ever, saying that everyone is trying to make a name for themselves in Metropolis when they all know that Lois Lane is the one with the journalistic chops. Clark says that he's writing a story up on the Shot Toys incidents, since his sources say that the explosions were all caused by the toys themselves. Clark asks Lex for a comment, but Luthor says that if the Daily Planet prints one word of this, he will sue for libel. Clark reminds him that the Planet has a right to report the news, and Luthor knows that he would indeed lose the suit, but the Planet would be bankrupt in the process. Clark knows that if the attacks continue, someone will get hurt, and wonders if Lex has had any threats from Winslow. Lex reminds Clark that Shot is a psychopath who couldn't cut it in the toys business, so he turned to a life of crime to pay for the bills, and Lex and his company have spent millions trying to rebuild the Shot Toys brand as a proud American company, a company that would have died without him and Lexcorp. Clark says that the people say that Shot turned to crime as a way to try and save his struggling company from a hostile takeover by Lexcorp, but getting caught and sent to jail ruined those plans and allowed Lex to buy up the company conveniently for nothing. Clark also knows that this proud American company that Lex loves so much also moved production overseas. Lex isn't happy, saying that the Planet continually fawns over Superman and his powers, despite him being the most dangerous alien on the planet, and Kent now has the gall to lecture him about making toys in China. Lex refuses to answer Clark's question regarding threats by Toyman, causing Clark to leave, but Lex asks him if he's embarrassed that his wife does a better job than he does. Clark says that maybe one day when Lex loves someone, he will know the answer to that question. Later at Town Diner, Clark tells Lois about his interview with Lex, surprising his wife about what he said. Clark knows that Luthor stonewalled him and he doesn't now have much of a story left thanks to all his leads running dry, but he's got to find out who's behind the attacks. Lois asks if he's told Perry, but Clark says he didn't want to do it on an empty stomach, but he doesn't have much of a choice as Perry storms in, confronting Clark and telling him that he just got off the phone with Lexcorp's legal counsel, and maybe Clark has something to tell him. Clark hopes he doesn't want him to back off the story because of this, but Perry says that he's riled up Luthor, so the story is finally getting somewhere, warning Clark that he just needs to be smart about it and not try and ambush billionaires. Outside, a little girl wants to go to the Shot toy store, but soon points out to her mother the spaceships in the sky. Just down the street, dozens of little spaceships begin attacking the people, blowing up the cars in the street. As Lois and Perry are distracted by the chaos, Clark takes off. Lois tells Perry it's time for them to leave as well, as she whispers to Clark, telling him that she will save his coat while he saves the day. As Clark rushes down the alley and changes into his costume, he tells his wife he will, speeding off into the sky and down the street. In a building nearby, Shot watches on, knowing that this is all Lex Luthor's fault, and he won't allow the man to ruin everything his family built. Donning his Toyman head, he says that if Shot can't run Shot Toys, then no one will. Down in the street, Superman saves the little girl and her mother, telling them to go get shelter as he blasts the spaceships with his heat vision. The ships all target Superman, blasting him with their lasers, but using his super speed and heat vision, Superman manages to take out all of the ships at once. The little girl meanwhile jumps on one of the spaceships, destroying it and telling Superman that she helped. Superman tells her that she did, and now she's got to make sure she always helps, especially with her mother. Looking at the broken toys, Clark finds they belong to Shot and Lexcorp. Later at the Daily Planet, Clark goes to Perry with his lead, telling him the toys aren't actually from Lexcorp, but are imitations that were inserted into their own distribution channels. Clark knows that this is still connected to Lex and thinks Shot is back for revenge. Perry tells him to go and connect the dots, wondering why Luthor wouldn't just close the toy division after Winslow became a villain, since no one would buy his toys. Clark thinks that Luthor's ego is getting in the way of admitting defeat, and as they leave the office, they find a shocked Jimmy taking photos. Perry asks what's wrong with the kid as he finds Toyman is in the office, wanting to speak to Clark Kent. Clark tells Toyman not to harm anyone, but the villain says that he wants to make an official statement to Clark, saying that until Lex ceases production of shot toys, he will continue to attack. Clark asks Perry if this counts as confirmation on his leads, as Lois smashes Toyman over the head with a fire extinguisher, revealing he was a robot. Clark asks his wife if she knew it was a robot, and Lois feigns like she always knew. Toyman says that to make sure Luthor understands, he's got a new toy to play with, activating his giant robot at Shot Toys to rampage through downtown towards LexCorp. Superman races to confront the robot, smashing into it as Lex watches from his office, finding this all too predictable. The robot grabs the hero and slams him into a car, stepping on him as he continues to look for Lex. Superman blasts the robot with his heat vision, blowing a hole into it and entering the robot as Lex knows that Superman will save him. Inside the robot, Superman begins ripping its arms and legs off, crippling it and destroying it. The crippled robot, however, says he's got one last game and it activates an explosive. Mercy warns Lex to evac the building since 10 more giant robots from the Shot Toys locations around Metropolis are headed their way. Superman, meanwhile, rips the head off the robot, stopping its countdown and disabling the explosive, telling Toyman that playtime is over. Lex knows that it took Superman long enough, telling his people that he wants to issue a statement that they are shuttering Shot Toys and all its products will be destroyed. Superman confronts Lex, but soon leaves without saying a word as Luthor says that he will see him soon. Days later, Clark interviews Lex, who says that the robots have all been destroyed and disposed of. Clark wants to know what took him so long to acknowledge that Shot Toys was tainted, but Lex thinks the reporter is suggesting that there is some type of agenda on his and LexCorp's part, and Clark says that a source told him that the robots and other menacing toys that Shot made contained advanced processors and components, many military in nature, and maybe Lex buying Shot Toys was a way to gain access to this tech. And when the company's portfolio didn't satisfy him, Lex drew Shot out of hiding to see what designs he had kept to himself. Lex thinks that Clark is suggesting he's using Toyman's genius to improve his own defense contract division, offended at that notion, since Toyman was a grown man playing childish games and his designs were useless. Meanwhile, at a secure LexCorp lab, Shot's toys are all disassembled by Lex's men, who plan on reverse engineering the designs for their defense division. Superman Man of Tomorrow issue 3 again does a great job of bringing up a lesser used villain from Superman's rogues gallery, making him threatening and making for an enjoyable action-packed issue. I love the theme carrying on through these issues of the focus of the journalist side of Clark over his super side, and it makes for some really great reading and yet again shows he doesn't really need flashy superpowers to help win the day, although at times they do help with giant robots. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.